Before we dive into this video, I just want to give a quick shout out and a thank you to the good folks at ClearScope. They're now an official supporter and partner of SuperPath, which I'm really grateful for. I'm also really excited to bring SuperPath the knowledge, the expertise, and this great product that Bernard and his team have built. And as a special perk for SuperPath Slack members and email subscribers, if you DM Bernard or Shannon, who's the senior marketing manager at ClearScope in our Slack community, they'll send you a free keyword report. So just tell them a keyword that you're working on, something challenging, something competitive. Let them know what it is. They're going to send you a free keyword report. That way you actually get a bunch of really useful data that you can use in your content. And then you can also see what ClearScope is actually like. You don't need to log in. You don't need to create a password, none of that stuff. They're just going to send you a link. You'll be able to see it, get all the data. All that's free. Just DM him, either Bernard or Shannon in the Slack community to get that. We'll get on to the video. Thanks so much again to the good folks at ClearScope. So far, we've talked mostly about creating new content from scratch, right? And like that's a process that content creators are familiar with. You know, you're tasked to grow traffic. And so you go through this process of keyword research and content creation and optimization, et cetera. But a lot of teams already have maybe massive libraries of content on the site that's performing or not performing. This was something that when I was at Animals, we spent a lot of time thinking about, and actually went so far as to build a simple tool that would help sites analyze which of their content pieces were on the decline, and then provide a list so you could say, okay, these are the articles we need to refresh. Now I'm setting up here because I know we're going to talk about refreshing, but one of the challenges that we knew that folks came up against is like, okay, we're going to refresh content. Like it's an easy concept to internalize, but then when they would get into like the nitty gritty of it, they might get a little lost. And but like, what exactly am I going to do to it? Am I just going to change the publish date? Am I just going to make it longer? Am I going to fix the H2s? Anyways, long lead up. But Bernard, could you kind of like talk us through like how might you go about using ClearScope if you're a content team that's going to be doing some refreshing?
So there's a couple of different rationales or like say states that your content can be in. Number one is that your content has never ranked. And I would say that this is the state of the majority of people's content, right? It's a luxury to be able to have ranked content and have it decline over time because you've likely done a lot of things right already leading up to that particular
That's an interesting
rank.
point. I've never really considered that, but that's a good place to start.
Yes, yes. So again, right, Jimmy Daly at Animals, they have this cool tool that'll tell you, right, are you losing traffic to content decay? It analyzes Google Analytics. You just simply integrate it. Sweet tool. Check it out. Okay, the reason why, say, your content has never ranked is going to be a combination of low domain authority, subject matter authority, and content relevance, like low across the board. So you can imagine that Bernard has a blog. You can call it Bernard's blog. And I want to get into the personal finance niche because I've realized that should I rank for credit card related searches, that is going to be pretty valuable, right? Because that credit card companies are willing to pay for quite a bit of leads. The reason why I'm likely not ranking in the first place is because Bernard's blog, again, has not been verified by Google as being a legitimate website. So you can imagine in that presentation, the relevant backlinks thing and that graph that we were looking at, right? Google's going to initially seed my content really low, right? Maybe position 200 and whatever, because they're like, we don't trust Bernard's blog. And he has to earn our trust over time. You can imagine though that NerdWallet is saying, well, we want to write a piece of content on best credit cards during COVID, because why not, right? Google's going to take a look at that and say, well, their domain authority is rock solid. And guess what? Every single other piece of content that they talk about surrounding credit cards or personal finance is also rock solid. And then they're going to take a look at that content comprehensiveness using their own natural language processing and say, okay, this piece of content also looks pretty good. And they're going to initially seed as position 1, 2, or 3. So we'll start there, right? Because the reason why your content is, say, losing rankings is likely because you've done a lot of right things, right? If you come from a more established website, you didn't really have to deal with this low domain authority sort of idea because, you know, the Shopify's, the G2s, uh, the nerd wallets, right, already had a very high domain authority. But the reason why you're losing rankings is very likely due to content relevance and topical changes, right? The best way to explain this is really just with this like quick Google search for coronavirus, right? You'll notice that there's a top stories block in the above the fold, and that's because, well, coronavirus as a topic is rapidly changing over time. Actually, the presence of a top stories block would indicate that this as a search deserves recent content. And you'll notice that the same thing would happen for best credit cards, except the top stories, guess what, is, okay, it's not on the front page. I was gonna say lower on the front page. Okay, it's not, I guess Google is running an experiment, but it's usually on the front page. And you can see a block like somewhere down the line. You'll also notice everyone's saying like March 2021, March 2021, all that different stuff. Right. And that's that banks are issuing new credit cards and say deprecating support for some of their existing credit cards. And that's to say that, right, the reason why your content is losing relevance, say in the coronavirus example, is that, okay, well, people are talking about vaccines now. And 1 week ago, they might have been talking about something else surrounding that particular topic. So what a lot of content workflows have kind of overlooked is this idea that content needs to be kept fresh or maintained, right? And so again, this is just an example of how some people could imagine a content inventory, is that it's either managed in a Google Sheet, like what you see here, maybe an Airtable, a Trello, an Asana, something like that. They oftentimes have a lot of the same ideas, like, you know, who's working on it, what's the status of it, target keywords, the URLs, that kind of stuff. Assuming that you have something like this that is an encapsulation of your content inventory, you'll see here that in ClearScope, you can come here and you can run many reports like this. Clicking on that, you can just simply take in the target keywords that you have over here on the left, and then you can put in the URLs over here on the right, running then the ClearScope reports like this. ClearScope's going to automatically take the content off of those pages, stick them inside ClearScope for analysis. So what you're going to get back is an audit of your existing content inventory.
Oh,
and
that's interesting.
What has likely happened is that for whatever reason, maybe you have touched upon different relevant concepts that Google has deemed super important in that period of time, like 1 year ago or 2 years ago, yet that's no longer as important. So it's important to figure out what is the right intent that the user is going to care about by when you're doing a content refresh, right? By looking at, okay, what is ranking for this particular like thing? And is my content still in alignment with that high level directional strategy, which is why we started with choosing the right keyword is more important than chasing monthly search volume, right? Still want to make sure that that intent is correct. And then secondly, you want to make sure that the content that you've produced is still hitting all of the right things. So you can see here how to improve your credit score. I'm currently a C+. And that might be because, right, we'll come into a ClearScope report. You can see here content is already inside. I can then sort by unused, be like, oh, okay, credit utilization, right? For whatever reason, when we say last published or updated this piece of content, I guess a couple of months ago, we didn't talk about credit utilization because maybe that wasn't as important surrounding improving your credit score. So we can go here, right, usually in the step of refreshing existing content. I'm just gonna look at the conceptual gaps that we're not talking about, probably first sorted by heading presence. So you can see here like new credit and credit utilization are gonna be sections that we haven't talked about. So I'll drop those down as basically conceptual gaps that our piece of content has failed to address. And we'll say, okay, these are probably sections that we're gonna have to talk about within our existing piece. Authorized user is actually interesting. I'm not sure why it's being discussed. So I can come here, click on examples, click on headings, and it looks like becoming an authorized user on someone's account actually does, oh, like build credit probably fairly quickly. So can I rate my credit score fast? So that's interesting, right? How to improve your credit score. You can actually will be like be added as an authorized user. And it looks like people kind of like want these little tips of improving your credit score, maybe like fast, like that. So then I might say, okay, well that was
Or
interesting.
or overnight or in 5 minutes.
Yeah, they're right. If I with home remedies, absolutely right. You just take your credit card and freeze it, and actually put it in your freezer.
Right.
Totally. So then I'd be like, okay, well, that was interesting, right? Maybe, right, if I did the search on how to improve your credit score, they're like, oh, look, right,
Oh
fast.
yeah, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then eight ways to build fast, right? And so sneaky. And it's like, oh, okay, right, that's interesting. And this is a little bit sneaky, right? Being added as an authorized user. Actually, my dad did that for me when I was growing up. He was like, I'll just so apply to one and add you. And I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool.
Right.
So that just like came to my mind. But yeah, so then we might say, okay, we might need to reframe this a bit, right? We're seeing these new ideas and concepts come up where how to improve your credit score like fast, like credit utilization is interesting. That's like alluding to this concept that maybe to improve your credit score, you actually apply for many different credit cards and get high credit limits to keep your credit utilization low, right? And then you can have people add you as authorized users. And now we have some grounding, right? And say, what? Okay, right? How to improve your credit score is starting with how to check your credit score and what is. And it's like, okay, maybe, right, we don't need those. And now we have some orientation on what we should be doing, how we should be doing it, all that different stuff. So then, right, when your content inventory is done, go to your ClearScope report history like this, and you'll see here, right, all of the things are going to be graded. And the things that are grading as like a C plus or B plus, they're going to indicate that, okay, maybe we started with a high quality piece of content given the time. But as you can see here, times have changed and people have found more innovative ways to improving their credit score fast. And therefore, we should likely be addressing those because that's what users are going to be caring about in today's algorithm.
That's really cool. I love it. Do you have a sense of like how often people should be checking their old
I
content?
love that you brought that up. So I have in this column what's known as a refresh cadence. And
Oh,
that's to say that for the most part, right, I'm just going to say general best practice, once a year is perfectly fine, right? We brought these up as examples because they are very unique. Best credit cards, right? Banks issue credit cards every month, change the existing terms on the credit cards that they're supporting. So that you see like every month or week. However, right, for the most part, you could imagine like, email marketing tips. And the best way to find this out, in my opinion, is simply to Google it, right? If you see these date stamps here, like 2019, 2018, 2020, like that, right? And those 2018 generally indicate that this as a concept is not evolving very quickly.
yeah.
That's the key, right? Is that you want to update your content based on how quickly the topic is evolving. And I bring this up quite a bit is that facts, like who was the first president of the United States, right? No need, because that's never going to change. That's always going to be George Washington, right? And so there's no need to update those. So I have a column here that I recommend people do, but just write down the different keywords that people that you're targeting, and then pin down how quickly the topic is evolving over time. And then you can just get that by performing the searches, so, right? Like A/B testing. You see here, okay, this one doesn't really have like just 2017, and then you have some 2020s, that kind of stuff. And so, okay, generally speaking, once a year is going to be perfectly fine. And then in the kind of more extreme cases, you might see weekly or monthly or daily or quarterly. Quarterly kind of happens more for, you can imagine, like more of these like financial things. It'll be like
Mm,
cloud market share, right? December, like leads in that, like 2021, like you'll usually have like, Q4, Q3, that kind of thing. So again, it
right.
just depends.
Yeah.
And it does depend on how quickly it evolves.
In talking to a lot of people about refreshing content, I found that teams that have a ton of content take this very seriously. Like if you have a site with thousands or tens of thousands of pieces of content, they take content refreshing very seriously. And it's a huge amount of work to maintain a site with that many articles versus teams who might have, they have 50 articles or 100 articles on the site. And they would say things like, our site's not that big, so we don't need to, or we don't need to prune things because it's not that big. And it's interesting because actually, well, one that you might as well you might as well refresh content if it's not performing at the level that you would like for it to. And two, it's so much easier to do it when you don't have that many to worry about. You know, it's so
I
much easier for the team
know.
with 10,000 articles to like kind of run some numbers in their head and be like, wow, okay, we could increase our traffic by a huge amount if we refresh stuff. The same is true like on a relative, like on a percentage basis for a site with not a lot of articles. And it's just such a quick win because you don't have to spend a ton of time doing it.
Oh yeah, I think that this is a new paradigm, like moving forward. We do have an upcoming feature which we call monitored query, which would just automatically allow you to rerun ClearScope reports every week. And you can imagine, right, if you
Mm,
started with an A plus piece of content, which indicated that you covered it really well, and over time it became a A minus or a B plus, what that would indicate is that, well, your content is not covering what other pieces of content are covering now, which means that you should probably go back and update it. And I absolutely agree. It's like for the majority of B2B companies out there, your universe of keywords is really only like 50 to 100 anyways, right? And but those are going to be your extraordinarily valuable keywords.
yeah.
Things where it's like your brand of category or category versus other category. And it's like, yeah, those you just go back, update those, once a month, once a season, right? Depending on how cutting edge your industry is, right? In
Right.
natural language generation, yeah, you probably have to update it much more aggressively because that field is changing. Whereas for email marketing, it's like, yeah, write a great subject line. It's like, well, that hasn't changed for a
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
time.
I would go as far as if you're a content team, build this directly into your editorial calendar. So like, and you could even automate it, right? So like, say you use Airtable to run your content calendar, you could create a zap that uses the time zap to say, okay, 12 months after this article is moved to the published column, put it back in the draft column because we have to take a look at it again. And by putting it on the calendar, it makes it feel like part of your day-to-day work as opposed to a special project that takes away from the new content. That I think is a point of tension for some teams. They feel like, well, we have to create X posts per week or month, so we don't have time to do this. Bake it in, make it feel as much like new content creation as you can.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, that's to say that to sum it up, right? Most people are going to be in a state where the content has never ranked. And that said, right, doing a clear scope based content refresh is one part of the other part, which is also going to be sprinkling in some link building and also just patience, right? I think a lot of people go, oh man, it's been 6 months, my SEO strategy is not working, and right back to that how SEO works presentation. It's fine, it's okay, right? SEO takes a long time because Google sandboxes you in their experimentation queue. Want to make sure that should they give your content the light of day in front of relevant users, that it's actually going to do well. And that process just takes time. So having some patience there. If you do have the luxury, right, that your content did rank and somehow is dropping off, it's very likely to do with your content relevance. And that again is just part of the new SEO game. And likely it's because the topic has evolved and your content has been left in the dust. Very easy to wrap your head around that concept with like coronavirus, right? I have to really be hitting coronavirus topics every hour or day to stay relevant. And the moment I'm not, Google's not going to like let me onto the front page because it recognizes that the topic has already shifted past what I was talking about. So auditing your existing content inventory, pretty easy using ClearScope's bulk functionality, and then a couple of other resources just in case you wanted to check this out.
Great resources, by the way. Cool, Bernard. This is awesome. I appreciate that you walked us through this tool. I appreciate that you've built this tool to make people's lives easier. But also, I just appreciate like the layer of expertise over all of it. Like, it's not just put your keyword in here and it spits out the answer for you. Like, I just appreciate the way that you talk about this. It's clearly through the content marketer's perspective, and it resonates. So, thank you for your time.
No, thank you, and I look forward to our AMA.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see you in Slack.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks, Bernard.
Of course.
Just a quick reminder that if you'd like to get a free keyword report from the folks at ClearScope, just send a DM to either Bernard or Shannon in the SuperPath Slack community. Tell them a keyword that you're working on. They're going to send you a link to a ClearScope keyword report. It's going to include a bunch of really useful data that you can use in your content efforts, and you'll get a free look at the actual tool ClearScope in action. So go check that out. Thanks so much again to the good folks at ClearScope for supporting SuperPath. We really appreciate it.